For those who were here last week, we were learning about healing and the month of Iyar. We're in the month of Iyar, and there's a special, call it segula, there's a special energy that's connected to refuah. We're not going to go back over the whole thing, but it's based on the idea that the letters for Iyar, the main letters, Aleph, Yud, Resh, are the first letters of Ani Hashem Rofecha. I am God, your healer. And since the month is Iyar and the Roshei Tevot, the acronym, is I am Hashem, your healer, so there's much discussion about that. And we're going to continue from there, but for about half the class. The second half of the class, just a day ago, was Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach, and I want to talk briefly about that. And this Thursday night is Lag BaOmer. So there is a lot happening. We'll get in as much as we can. So let's continue with this idea of Iyar and healing. So first of all, Iyar is very close to the letters for or, for light. And in the Tanakh, in the Bible, so the month of Iyar has a different name. It's called Chodesh Ziv. And Ziv means illumination, which is very, very close to the idea of Zohar, which is the book of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that we celebrate this Thursday night on Lag BaOmer. So it has to do with light. Why is Iyar connected to light? Is because after a long winter, the sun begins to increase in strength and length of days in Nisan, but really takes off in Iyar. So light is all about Iyar, and healing has a lot to do with light. I'm going to come back to this idea, but hold that, because light and Iyar and healing are all very, very connected. So, but the place I want to start is where we left off last week, is we said, when did God say, I am God, your healer? So it was after we crossed the Reed Sea, and we went 3 days without water, and we came to a place called Mara. Mara means bitter. And the Torah says that they found the water, but they couldn't drink it because Marimhem, the waters were bitter. But we learned that the Baal Shem Tovs read it differently. Not so much that the waters were bitter, but their attitude was bitter. And that made the water appear to be bitter. This is where we left off last week. And so this is a lead into a very, very important idea that the Torah gives over in the two portions that we just had recently, Tazria and Metzora. The whole idea of this disease called Sira'at, sometimes translated as leprosy, but we're told specifically it was not leprosy. And in fact, the causes were not physical. They were caused by a spiritual malady. And this disease came upon people, in a sense, to force them to do tshuva, to repent. And the Gemara gives over a whole list of different, we'll call them sins, mistakes, misjudgments that people make, wrong actions that could lead a person to get this, what we're told is was a spiritual disease. It came out physically, but it was a spiritual disease. This is the only disease mentioned in the Torah. So what can we learn from this? We can learn something incredibly important. And it applies to us today, that anyone who's into health understands that until maybe 30 years ago, the whole medical system was based on symptoms. And then in the last 30 years, there's been a tremendous revolution in how we look at health. And just like the Torah was trying to explain to us in these two parshas, that so many of our physical ailments, they're really physical ailments, call them high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, ulcers, migraines, a whole list of modern health problems that more and more individuals and the entire medical system is realizing is based a lot on lifestyle choices and attitudes. And when people live a very, very stressful, high intensity kind of life, there are effects from this. And the effects come out in all kinds of different ways in our body. And this is just such an important general principle. And the Torah is really telling us, it spent two whole parshas on this disease that we don't even have anymore. But the principles behind it are super relevant. So when we live a stressful, high tension kind of lifestyle, so it also leads to lack of exercise, very, very poor eating habits, bad sleeping habits. People right now in America, there is a horrible, horrible opioid problem. And it's not what many, many, many people associated with drugs maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Right now, most of the people who are suffering from opioid addiction are regular people. It's not like I said, the stereotypes we have from maybe the 60s and 70s as to who's taking drugs. Right now, there's so many people suffering from many of these things that I said and are in real pain. And they start on these over-the-counter or at least prescription opiates. And before they know, they're hooked. They're hooked. And it does take away the pain, but the threshold they have to up it and up it. And I haven't followed in the last 6 months, but as of 6 months ago, approximately 100 people a day were dying in the United States from opiate overdoses. 100 people a day. That's like a lot of people. So that's the general idea that the Torah was teaching, is that our attitude, our lifestyle, our belief system affects our physical health and our bodies to a tremendous degree. So Rabbi Nachman, who lived a little bit over 200 years ago, so he talked a lot about different aspects of health. And one of the things he said is that health is dependent on the blood. And the blood is dependent on joy, on simcha. He said because when a person is depressed, the flow of blood is affected by this. They become lethargic. The classic case of people who quite literally have a hard time getting out of bed because they feel hopeless. They feel like, I don't know what I'm doing in this world. Like, why get up? Why do anything? Of course, this is a a terrible burden, depression. So Rabbi Nachman was saying the most important thing in good health is joy, because joy makes our blood flow. So I want to read something from the Alter Rebbe. This comes from Igeret HaKodesh. I'm going to read it in English. It's part of a longer piece, but I'm just taking out what he says, and you'll see what he's saying is virtually the same as Rabbi Nachman. And this is in the Tanya. And he says like this: the cause of illness or health lies in the spread and flow of the life force vested in the blood, which flows from the heart to all the limbs, and the blood with the spirit of life in it circulates in all the limbs, through the blood vessels in them, and returns to the heart. When the circulation and flow of this spirit of life is consistently as it should be, in its proper order, as arranged for it by the blessed fountainhead of life, God, the individual person is perfectly healthy. For all the limbs are bound together and receive their proper vitality through the heart, through the circulation. But if there's any disorder in whatever place, restraining, hindering, or reducing the circulation of the blood with the spirit of life vested in it, then this bond, which by means of that circulation binds all limbs of the body to the heart, is broken or diminished, and the individual may fall ill and sick. Now, it goes without saying that this is very general. Obviously, there's much sickness caused by genetic factors that in certain ways are somewhat beyond our control. How we react to them, and I believe we touched on it last week, there's a huge difference if two people are suffering from the same illness, but one has a positive attitude about life and is convinced that they're going to be healed. The chances are so much greater of the other person who is depressed, who feels they won't be healed and sees no light at the end of the tunnel. It makes a huge, huge difference. So here we see both Rabbi Nachman and the Ari are associating good health with the flow of blood. Now remember, in the Torah, it mentions actually many times the prohibition of eating animal blood. That when we eat animals that we're allowed to, that are kosher, all of the blood has to be taken out. And we're told why. It says because the nefesh of the animal is in the blood. That's what the Tanya says. The life force is in the blood. And if our attitude about life is depressed, it is going to affect the whole flow of the blood. So I want to take this idea and just look at the word Adam. So everyone explains the word Adam, you can divide it by the syllable, the Aleph or the A of Adam, and the letters Daled, Mem, which is blood. So what is a human being, an Adam? A combination. The Aleph is the divine soul. The Dam is the body. So a human being is a construct of soul and body. But here the body is represented by the word Dam, blood. So this is a Torah from Rav Ginzburg. I'll never forget when I heard him say this. The expression, I almost fell off my chair. I almost fell off my chair. I was just so astounded by it. It sounds like a simple Torah, but the understanding, because we know that every word in the Torah, the letters that make up the word is not just a symbolic a combination of sounds that represents a concept. Like in English, this is a hand, and this is a head, and these are eyes. But in Hebrew, the words for all of these things, the letters that make them up are the animating force of the actual essence of what this entity is. So the same thing with the word Adam. So we already learned a beautiful understanding of what an Adam is from these letters. But Rav Ginzburg explains that Dam equals 44. And he said that we have 22 pairs of chromosomes. In every DNA, which is in every cell of the body, the whole DNA code is made up of 22 pairs of chromosomes. 22 times 2 is, of course, 44, which equals Dam. But there's a 23rd chromosome. We actually have 23 chromosomes. But what's the 23rd chromosome? It's the one that defines male or female. And so each person only gets one of those. They don't get the pair. It's either X or Y, either male or female. So that's 1. So what does Aleph equal? 1. What does Dam equal? 44. So here you see in the DNA, in the chromosomal makeup of a person, it's represented by this name, Adam. So, like I said, when I first heard this, I was just astounded. I was like, wow. Wow. I still am, actually. I still am. Okay, so now I want to give over one more idea. I'm going to call it more of a theoretic idea. And I'm going to do it very, very quickly. This is a practice that the Arizal was able to do. We only know about it because his student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, wrote about it and said that unfortunately, he never received instruction from the Arizal how to actually do this. So this is an art that may be lost, but we have the outline of it. We have the structure of it. So again, I'm going to do this very, very quickly. And that is the following, that there are 9 vowels in Hebrew. And according to Kabbalah, each one of the vowels corresponds to one of the sfirot, except the bottom one, Malchut, because all of this flows into Malchut. Malchut is considered a combination of all the other 9 vowels. Okay, now, like I said, each one of the vowels is connected to one of the sfirot. Now, if you look at the vowels very carefully, they're actually made up of lines and dots. I'll have to let everyone look into a book that has vowels in it, Hebrew vowels, but they're all made up of a series of either lines, dots, or a combination. So this is an amazing thing. So the Ari was, he would take someone's pulse, and through the flow of the blood, it was like there's a rhythm to it. And he could tell if the rhythm was made up of lines or dots or both. This is like Morse code. Morse code, which was revolutionary in its time, sent messages through lines and dots, which were then translated into letters, messages. So the Ari was able to feel a person's pulse, and he could identify which sphera or combination of sphirot was being like broadcast through the pulse of the blood. Now, many people know about Chinese medicine has a similar idea. The Ari identified that there were 9, in a sense, different types of basic blood flows and a health message that went with it. Well, Chinese message does it to this day. They identify different types of pulse and what it says about the person. So Rabbi Chaim Vital said that he himself didn't learn how to do this, but he knew that the Ari could do that, which is an amazing thing. So I'm just going to connect it to something else, is that when you hear the sounds of the shofar also are short sounds like the trua, which we're going to call dots, or longer shfarim, or the tekiah, also lines and dots. And so there's a divine message being sent through the sounds of the shofar. And depending on how we pick them up is how we receive, in a sense, the messages, the Morse code that the shofar is sending us. So these are very, very deep, profound ideas. Okay, I want to end this idea about health and the month of ER with what I started with, that ER, which is in the Tanakh is called the month of Ziv, of radiance, has to do with light. Remember, ER is very close to Or. So we might have learned last week, but if you take the word for healing, refuah, and you permute the letters, it spells Or Peh, the light of the mouth. So what can we learn from this? So first of all, we can learn for a patient and also for the healer or the doctor how important it's called bedside manners. In other words, if someone goes to a doctor and the doctor gives a diagnosis and does it in a very uncompassionate way, leaves no hope, you have 3 months, that's it, nothing to be done, is like a death sentence. So it's so important that the doctor, even if it looks bleak, does not leave a patient without hope. And as we said, even if that happened, it doesn't mean that it's reality. And I'll just share very, very quickly what happened with my father, alav shalom. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and he had a lot of treatments. And so I went to the doctor on my own because I wanted to hear the inside story. And I'll never forget the fact that I'm telling this story 25 years later. It affected me so deeply. The doctor was so uncompassionate. And he basically said he has the worst type of cancer. There's no cure for it. He has 3 to 5 years, if that. And anything I tried to ask him about, it was just, he wasn't interested in talking. Like you came, I told you, now leave. I walked out not so much crushed about the news, which I already knew that there was that he had prostate cancer, but the way that this doctor, I just, to this day, I'm just astounded. It turns out that my father lived 10 more years, and he passed away not from prostate cancer. And he was a very, very positive person. At the end, it was very complicated, but that's just an example of the light of the mouth. But this has to do with us also. If we look at our life with light in our eyes, and we see light at the end of the tunnel, and we see hope and healing, it makes a huge difference, huge difference. So I want to take this further, though, because this idea of refuah, of health being connected to light, is very, very appropriate in our time, because so many of the medical advances that have happened in the last 20, 30 years, which have revolutionized health, have lengthened people's lifespan and allowed people to live healthier, is dependent on the electromagnetic field. X-rays, ultra rays, MRIs, CAT scans, I said ultrasounds, all those different things is to the use of the electromagnetic spectrum, of which light is really actually just one of them. What we see as light is actually a very small part of the band of electromagnetic energy. So here we see light is really, really connected to healing. So there's a Torah from Rav Ginzburg that in King Solomon's, Nachum just said laser surgery. That's a huge one, huge one. The way they're using lasers, and also the use of computers in healing now. It's actually mind-boggling. It's actually mind-boggling what medicine is able to do, and we should give Israel a plug. Israel is absolutely one of the leaders in the world of medical research. There are it's not even research anymore. These are real things that are being used in hospitals all over the world to create healing. Quite amazing. So in what are called the 28 times, when King Solomon in the book of Kohelet says there is a time for this and a time for that. So one of them, there's a time for dying and there's a time for healing. So in Hebrew, the words are ve'et lirpo, a time to be healed. So Rav Ginzburg points out that those same letters of a time to be healed, if permuted differently, is pu'ulat or, an action of light. So here, like embedded in what King Solomon said, you see that the light there is such a big, big part of it. And we'll just connect this again with the blood, is when we have an attitude and a worldview that is connected to God's light and the light of the Torah and a sense of purpose and mission in this world, then it has an enormous effect on our health. So that is we'll call the conclusion of our segment about connecting health to the month of Iyar. There's much, much, much more, but we only have so much time. So I do want to mention just yesterday was Pesach Sheni. And Pesach Sheni it's not a well-known holiday, and it comes from in the desert in the second year. So the Jewish people kept Pesach. But it turned out that there were a number of people who were impure, and they couldn't bring the Korban Pesach. So they came to Moshe and said, we were doing actually a mitzvah, and we became impure through dealing with a dead body. Why should we miss out on this mitzvah? We want to do this mitzvah. So Moshe asked God, and God, in a sense, initiated something that wasn't in the Torah, and that's called the second Pesach. That someone who is impure or too far away from the temple and could not make it in time had a second chance, and that is on the 14th of Iyar. So just a few days ago was called the holiday of second chances. And so I want to give over a quick Torah from Rav Ginzburg, which is so relevant to today. And he says that in our generation, our generation, the generation before us, there have been two cardinal events on the Jewish calendar that both take place in the month of Iyar. And that is Yom Ha'atzmaut, the Israel Independence Day, and Yom Yerushalayim, which is in another week and a half approximately. And we'll talk about that when we get there. And that is in the 6-Day War, when the city of Jerusalem was reunited. So Rav Ginzburg says a seemingly simple thing, but it speaks volumes of our reality. So he says Independence Day is when the state of Israel was declared. Of course, it was followed by a war, which we won, and of course the 6-Day War. And he said that nothing happens by chance. The fact that both of these events, the creation of the state of Israel and the reunification of Yerushalayim, and of course all of Yehuda and Shomron, both happening in the month of Iyar, one before Pesach Sheni, Yom Ha'atzmaut, and one after, Yom Yerushalayim. So he says the message is very, very clear that God is giving us another chance. We're getting another chance. 2,000 years later, we are being given another chance to get it right. And I hope we get it right. There are no guarantees in this world, but we're living in a quasi-redemptive state now. I don't mean a political state, but a state of redemption. So hopefully all of the prophecies that the prophets said, the ingathering of the exiles, the rebuilding of the cities, the reunification of Yerushalayim, the desert turning green, all of these were predictions from more than 2,000 years ago, and they're all happening now. So God is giving the Jewish people another chance. So like I said, it seems like a very simple connection, simple Torah, but it like I said, it speaks volumes of the reality that we're living in. Okay, so I'll say l'chaim to that. That's a good thing to say l'chaim to.
Chaim.
Okay, we're going to continue now. I'm just reminding everyone that when we finish, we will unmute everyone, and I'll look at the questions in the chat, and people will be able to ask questions and make comments and share what they would like. So Thursday night is Lag BaOmer. There is so much to say about Lag BaOmer. So all I could do is pick a couple of, we'll call them gems, nuggets of wisdom to try to share. So the first thing is, which is very appropriate, and I'll take this opportunity because I didn't do it at the beginning, is all of our classes we have in mind for a refuah shlema for Rav Ginzburg, and we should all continue to pray for Yitzchak, Harav Yitzchak Feivish ben Braina Malka. Very, very important that everyone tries to have the Rav in mind. So the name of the organization is Gal Einai. And it comes from a pasuk, Gal Einai ve'abita niflaot mitoratecha. Open my eyes that I shall see wonders from your Torah. It's from the 119th Psalm in the letter Gimel. The 119th Psalm has 8 verses for each of the 22 letters. So 8 times 22 is 176. It's the longest psalm in the book of Psalms, 176. And in the Gimel is open my eyes that I shall see wonders in your Torah. So Rav Ginzburg points out that Lag BaOmer is literally means the 33rd day of the Omer period. Lamed is 30 and Gimel is 3. So that equals 33. So Lag BaOmer is literally the 33rd day of the Omer period. But if you take the letters Lamed Gimel and you just reverse them, it's Gal. Open my eyes that I shall see wonders from your Torah. And of course, this is talking about what we call the hidden Torah, the secrets of the Torah, the inner dimensions of the Torah, what we lump all together and call today Kabbalah and Chassidut. So just let's look at the word Gal just for a second. Gal is also the root of Galut and Geula, exile and redemption. And in fact, the difference between Galut, Gola, and Geula is just the letter Aleph. And what we learn from this is that the cycle, the parameters, the context of all of not just Jewish history, but all of human history is this repeating cycle of exile and redemption. But we want to add the Aleph, the divine spiritual inner dimensions of reality that will break the cycle of galut, of exile, and usher in the final redemption. The word to reveal, legalot, is from the same root. In the verse we brought before of open my eyes, it means reveal to my eyes. So the idea of revelation, of revealing, is the same letters. And of course, one of the things that we're celebrating on Lag BaOmer is the whole personality of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who gave us the tradition of the Zohar. And this is to this day, is still call it the foundational text of Kabbalah. And it's all revelations. We have a general principle that the farther we get from Sinai, in a sense, the more cloudy the revealed Torah gets. Now, don't misunderstand me, but there was a time in Jewish tradition that there was very few disagreements in Jewish law. But as we got farther and farther from Sinai, the tradition became, I'll use the word cloudy. And that's why today, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, each opinion has its source in the Torah, and there's actually something very beautiful about it. But today, in almost any question of Jewish law, you will get different answers, different traditions. And our principles, these and these are the words of the living God. Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. But in what's called the secrets of the Torah, the farther we get from Sinai means the closer we are to Mashiach, and more gets revealed. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, in giving over the teachings to his students, was revealing really a whole new level of understanding the Torah, a whole new plane of consciousness. And ever since then, it has increased. The same thing with the Arizal. The Arizal came and again just revealed just ideas that no one had heard before, no one had understood before. Now, I should mention, and it's very important to mention, that the Arizal spent 20 years in, I'll call it semi-isolation. It was close to total isolation, but he did have a wife and family. So it was not total, but he basically spent 20 years by himself learning Torah from Eliyahu Hanavi, and was given permission to reveal a whole new strata, a whole new level of understanding the Torah. And then the Baal Shem Tov comes, and he opened up the whole world of Chassidut. So the farther we get from Sinai and the closer we get to Mashiach, the more the hidden teachings of the Torah are revealed. And that's really what we're celebrating on Lag BaOmer, this idea of Gal Einai ve'abita niflaot mitoratecha. So that's one idea. Another idea is, at first it might sound, I'll call it outlandish, or like a way out Torah. So Rav Ginzburg said that if you take the three letters of the word Shema, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, hear, O Israel, Hashem our God, Hashem is one. So Shema means to hear, to understand, a deep level of understanding, not superficial hearing. So he said that the three letters of Shema, the first letter Shin is Shimon Bar Yochai. The Mem is Meir, Rebbe Meir. I'll explain in a second. And the Ayin is Rebbe Akiva, Ayin, Akiva. So you hear this Torah and it's like, what does this mean? Now, first of all, these three figures are very connected. Rebbe Meir, according to tradition, his yurtzeit was on Pesach Sheni, just yesterday. Rebbe Shimon and Rebbe Meir were both students of Rebbe Akiva. And not just any students. One of the other things that we're commemorating on Lag BaOmer is, we're told in the Gemara that between Pesach and Shavuos, it doesn't give any more detail than that, but between Pesach and Shavuos, 24,000 students of Rebbe Akiva died. And there are different traditions, the significance of Lag BaOmer. Some say they died the first 32 days of the Omer, and they stopped dying on Lag BaOmer. Some say they died the whole 49 day period, but only for 33 days of it. And so since Lag BaOmer is the 33rd day, so that's commemorated. Others, there's a disagreement where the 33 days are. Is it from the first day of the Omer till Lag BaOmer? Is it from Rosh Chodesh Iyar till Shavuos? Again, many, many different traditions. But the basic tradition is that they passed away between Pesach and Shavuos. And there was something about one tradition is that they died throughout the entire Omer period, except for Lag BaOmer. Something unusual happened, and they didn't die on Lag BaOmer. So that's one of the things. So here we see in the Shema, Shimon, Meir, and Akiva. So what happened after the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva passed away? So you would think, I give up. I just spent decades teaching these students. They were to be the leaders of the next generation. Rabbi Akiva was quite elderly by then. According to tradition, he lived to be 120. Or he could have said, God, I guess you're sending me a message that whatever I had to give over, it's over. But Rabbi Akiva didn't do that. He was the ultimate optimist. It says that he went to the south and he took 5 students and he gave over the whole tradition to these 5 students. Now, again, we have very, very little time here, but who were 2 of these 5 students? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Meir. So we see when we say the Shin is Shimon, the Mem is Meir, and the Ayin is Akiva. Now we have to understand that in Jewish history, Rabbi Akiva is one of the most important links in the chain of tradition. That it's considered that through him, to these 5 students, he was able to give over the entire oral tradition. But more than that, he was also able to give over the whole mystical tradition. And he gave the mystical tradition to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and Rabbi Meir received more the oral tradition. So when we say Shema Yisrael, these 3 figures, we wouldn't have Judaism the way we know it now without these 3 figures. If we had more time, we could go into it much, much deeper. But I want to go deeper here, and I think probably most people know the story, but I'll tell it quickly. What's the connection with Shema? So that's Rabbi Akiva died with Shema on his lips. I think for anyone who is in the Sunday night class, we spoke about this in the context of Kiddush Hashem. So because of time, I'm not going to tell the whole story, but Rabbi Akiva was being tortured to death for teaching Torah publicly. And he died with the Shema on his lips. So it's not a casual connection that Shema ends with the ayin of Akiva. And Rav Ginzburg said, we know that in the Shema, there are 2 letters that are written large. The ayin of Shema and the daled of Echad. And they spell aid, a witness, to tell us that the Jewish people are the witnesses to the world of there being one God. So Rabbi Akiva, he's the ayin, he's the large ayin. So Rav Ginzburg said, why is the ayin of Akiva large? Because he was the Rebbe to Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon. He was their Rebbe. He was really the Rebbe of all Am Yisrael, truthfully. So this is an amazing thing. But I'm going to go even one step further, is the Arizal. So he revealed the incarnations of Rabbi Akiva. And there were a number of different personalities that were present in the soul of Rabbi Akiva. I'm only going to go through one of them, and that was Yakov Avinu. Our patriarch, Jacob, part of his soul was part of Rabbi Akiva's soul. And in the story of Yaakov Avinu, so we have two different stories about him saying the Shema. Now, this is before the Shema was written in the Torah. But we're told that the patriarchs were on such a level that they were already tuned in to the teachings of the Torah. I'm reading the chat, and Toby rightfully says that the letters of Yaakov and Akiva are virtually the same, except Akiva has an aleph at the end. So Yaakov and Akiva are the same letters. Now remember what we learned about Adam. So the fact that Akiva and Yaakov are the same letters is telling us that there's a deep connection. But two times in Yaakov's life, he said the Shema. Once is when he met Yosef again after 22 years. And it said that Yosef fell on his shoulder and cried. But it doesn't say what Yaakov did. So Rashi brings the tradition that Yaakov said the Shema, because Yosef was such an important part of his life. And for all those years, he thought he had died. And he was in pretty much in mourning for 22 years. And now he gets to see his son again. So all he could think of saying is the Shema. So that's one story. And the other story is on Yaakov's deathbed. So the Torah says he wanted to reveal to them what would happen in the end of days. And as he's about to reveal to him, the Shekhinah left him. His opportunity, or the open gate to reveal was in a sense shut. And it says Yaakov felt it must be that there's a problem with my children. They were all around his bed. He's about to leave the world, and he's about to give them their final blessings. And the sons could, all this was going on in Yaakov's mind, but they could read his mind, and they could see that he felt, well, there must be something with my children that I can't reveal to them. And so what they said the Shema all together in order to say to them, no, we are fitting vessels for your blessings and for your teachings. And when Yaakov heard this, he was so joyous. He said, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed, which is what we say when we say the Shema to this day. So here we have this deep soul connection between Yaakov and Akiva, and we have it encoded in the Shema. So these are very, very deep teachings. And our time is really up here. So I'm going to end with a blessing, and then we will open it up. So first of all, we all need a second chance. We all deserve a second chance. God is giving the whole Jewish people a second chance, but on an individual level, we all know that there are times we get to a place where we feel things are shut off from us. But we have to know that this holiday of Pesach Sheni is God is telling us, you missed it the first time, or you blew it the first time, you get another chance, and another chance, and another chance. And the second part of the blessing is on Lag BaOmer, we really, really connect ourselves to the inner dimensions of the Torah, and we express to the master of the world, Rabbanu Sha'olam, how much we want to learn the Torah, how much we want to be connected to the inner teachings, the animating force that will go back to the health that makes our blood flow with great joy.